All right. Thanks everyone for being here. I'm Andy Pease, current chair, and I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is the San Luis Obispo County Flood Control and Water Conservation District Water Resources Advisory Committee, WRAC, for today, Wednesday, April 5th, 2023. So thanks everyone for being here. And just to make sure we have a quorum, if you are a voting member today, can you please raise your hand? A lot.
18. I might have 19.
19?
When we go through the names,
Okay. Great. Well, thanks everyone for being here. 12 is quorum, so we really appreciate your being here in person. And thank you to the new members who were able to arrive a little for orientation. If you weren't able to do that and you would like to do that, talk to us afterwards, and we will, depending on how many people want it, run through it again, either the group or individually. All right, but let's go ahead and do introductions. Oh, do we have folks on Zoom? I didn't.
yes, we do.
Okay, sorry, I did not log on yet, so I will do that. Let's go through the introduction. So if you could state your name and organization.
Charles Warbo, Pastor City Council.
Stacey Inman, excuse me, Dismal Beach City Council. Angela Ford, County Public Works.
Scott Duffield, here for Drainage Community Services District.
Yep.
John Grosshart, Heritage Ranch Community Services District.
City of San Luis Obispo.
Kim Guthrie, City of Hawaii Ranch Council. David Chipping, Environment at Large.
Christine Mulholland, Environmental at Large. Linda Chipping, Coastal San Luis Resource Conservation District.
Eric Greening, another large environmental.
Yes, you do almost CSD.
Taylor Simpson Development at Large.
What was that?
Taylor Simpson Development at Large.
Tim Walters, Development at Large, alternate.
Woohoo.
Tom Burhan, District 4.
Steve Simpson, Shannon San Juan.
Scott Walton, Plant Conservation and Environmental Alternate. Eileen Via, Oceana Community Service District.
Pete Carter, San Luis Obispo County Farm Bureau.
Lee Nesbitt, EPC.
Ron Lance, Social CST. Rick Burchett, Slow-Case Number Alternate.
Jim Rainey, I'm Fleet Air Geologist.
Deborah Logan, Templeton CSD.
Great.
18.
Great. And you guys want to introduce again?
Joe Style, Program Manager for County Public Works.
Brendan Clark, Engineer, County Public Works, and I'm Committee Secretary.
Excellent. And I apologize to my friends on Zoom. I'm not logged in yet. I'm going to see if anybody wants to unmute and say hello.
Hello, it's Dolores Howard, Environmental at Large alternate.
Thank you.
Hi, it's Patricia Wilmore, Paso Robles Wine Country Alliance.
Thanks, Patricia.
Mhm.
Hi, Julie Ridgway, City of Slow.
Perfect. Anyone else?
Blaine Reilly, Slow County Groundwater Sustainability.
Thank you, Blaine.
Kelly
Okay.
Fortner, City of Slow.
Okay. Is that everybody?
Yep.
Sorry, that knew there'd be that moment. I was ready. Okay. All right, let's go into our next agenda item is the review and approval of the February 1st, 2023 WRAC meeting minutes. We did not have a March meeting, so those are our most recent minutes. Any comments, concerns, corrections to the meeting minutes? Eric?
Excellent minutes. They found just the right balance between not too much, but just enough.
Praise. All right. Appreciate that. Yeah, Tim.
I also want to add to that about adding the times in there and stuff like that and the recording link. I mean, way to go. That's awesome.
Yes. Praise me.
So.
So I'll move to approve.
And you can't,
Oh, good, I'll second.
you can't actually.
You're an alternate. Oh, no, he's got to adjust.
I lost all my powers.
In the spirit of honoring Dan Walter's intent to move, I will move in his.
For Tim, all right. Okay, so Tim, okay, so Eric's motion, and who is the second?
On the second.
All right, Christine's second. Do we get a vote
think
now
it's
that we're all
fine.
in point? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
We were just.
All right, great, thank you.
It's all good.
Okay, the next item is consider the submitting of our 2022 annual report to the Board of Supervisors. This is an annual letter that we provide. Thankfully, Brendan does the main draft. It's in your agenda packet. Hopefully you had a chance to review it. Just highlights what we did for the year. Any questions or comments on the on that, Steve?
I'm pretty sure we probably caught it, but it's addressed to Chair of the Board, John Rashawn, but below says.
Oops. Sorry, good catch.
It's funny, it wasn't on the other draft that you sent me. It like showed up afterwards. Thank you, appreciate that. Any other substantive or potentially embarrassing corrections?
A matter of interest, our all supervisors represented here, and I seem to remember we had a whole bunch of reps that weren't here. Maybe in the letter we should say they should send somebody.
Please fill your seats.
Yes, I mean,
All the,
I think we had at least 2 or 3 seats that were not filled.
the only one that's open right now is District 2.
Is it,
Yeah. So
District 4 was filled. I'm happy to see Jimmy Clothing picked you, and now I need an alternate.
We have an alternate, Erica Byland. She was here last meeting. I couldn't attend because I was out of the country, but she's not here today.
Okay, then. it should
But Eric,
say
you
they-
need an alternate is what you're saying in
Right, I need an
environmental, because you were Eric's alternate. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's correct. And we actually we have 4 openings in agriculture at large. I think that's our biggest gap right now, because the supervisors definitely was a gap. But we don't have either of the spots or the alternate. So if you know of somebody, please encourage them to, that would be a good fit. Please encourage them to apply. Any other comments or questions? Otherwise, I'll take a motion to approve the letter for submitting the report.
So moved.
Thank you, Christine.
I'll second.
Thanks, Eric. We hold hands. Voice vote. So fun. Everyone in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries, and we'll go ahead and submit on behalf of WRAC. All right, next item, elections for chairperson and vice chairperson. I did send a little follow-up email yesterday just to say I've been super happy to continue with this position. Ray Dienzo was the vice chair and heir apparent to be able to move into chair, but he's indicated that his schedule is too impacted with his work on the CSD. So we are looking for, and I term out in 2024. So if somebody would like to be president, you're welcome to step into that role now. And if not, I'm comfortable serving again, but we really need a vice chair for the year who would then next March move into the role of chair. So I'm looking for nominations. Christine?
Yes, I appreciate that you will do it for 1 more year, and hopefully someone will step up for their vice chair position and learn and be prepared. I appreciate all the years you've given to us, and I nominate Andy Pease to be our chair for 1 more year.
Great, thank you for your confidence. I hear a second. Are there any other nominations for president or chair? Any other chair nominations? Seeing none, all in favor of Andy Pease for another year, please say aye. Thank you for your ongoing confidence. I really do enjoy this group.
Gotta get the nays.
Yeah, any opposed? Yeah, because you know that what job they'll need then. All right, so vice chair. Anyone ready to go? Tom.
I'm willing to put myself forward because I think there's no one better to apprentice under than you. I do have some experience running meetings. I don't come with a preset agenda. I want this to be a forum where we can express all views safely and be welcome.
All right,
So I nominate Tom for vice chair.
all right.
What is Tom's last name?
Burhan.
Burhan.
B-U-R-H-E-N.
Thank you.
Who's the second, sorry? Okay, thank you.
With the understanding that we haven't met, don't know anything about you. Your introduction sold me.
Yeah, yeah. Right, so, so Tom and I have had a chance to work together briefly over the last few years, and then encouraged him to participate, and first as the environmental at large alternate, and then Jimmy Paulding appointed him as the, to represent the, was that 4th district? I never, 4th district. So, so I think that's a good choice. Are there any other nominations for vice chair? All right, seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, congratulations. Terrific. Phew. Okay, the next item we've put off a couple of times, but consider forming an ad hoc committee to review the committee bylaws. This is, we try to do this every other year, I think.
Yeah, it's been a few years though.
But it has been a few years. One of the items that we've talked about is how we calculate quorum was a matter of interest, and also kind of spots, membership spots that are left unfilled. So there's a couple of items to look at. So yes, Eric.
Based on the issue that came up just before the meeting, is the scope of possible action of the WRAC likely to be, or could it be a subject of this bylaws review? In other words, advising the county, perhaps not only as the flood control and foundation, but as participants in Sigma governance, that sort of question. Is that a question that could or would open?
I think that could probably be part of the bylaws discussion. I don't know that that would go anywhere, but that would be an opportunity to.
I mean, the purpose of the committee is the first, open up, first article. So without asking our, I'd probably want to check with the county council, depending on what came out, because there is a statute that kind of created the flood control district and talks about the review of the budget and things, but I don't see why, if again, the purpose is the first article, so I don't see why it couldn't at least be discussed, to be honest.
Tom. Oh, and then, sorry, David, and then Tom.
Yeah, I'm not unclear of the voting power of people coming in through the internet. I'm not sure whether state law covers this or whether our own law covers this. But these people who are on Zoom lost their voting power. I was wondering if it's within bylaws to either restore it or at least discuss it somewhere.
It's a state law managed issue. Related to the Brown Act.
But
it has changed recently.
Right, there are.
2449, and there has to be just cause or an exemption, so it's been changed.
Yeah, but it's not just, I'm staying at home today. It's not like that.
But
There are some exemptions.
But yeah, super good point. We could kind of memorialize that, what that process is, because if you are home with that you're sick or you're caring for someone sick and you know, declare that you are, and we have a physical form here, then we could do that. That's a good point. Tom,
I think, Christina, you want to go ahead?
If I can wait, I was
Go ahead,
just
Tom.
letting them know I'm on my
Oh,
way.
very
Yeah.
good. All right. So regarding the bylaws, I think back to last fall when the Board of Supervisors was considering the planting ordinance, which I think it's very characterized that a lot of people in this group had serious concerns about. And if I recall correctly, at the time, we were told that as a body, we could not necessarily take action to advise the board about the planting ordinance. But that we could, you know, as individuals, go to public comment or write a letter or something like that. And so regarding the book, is it something in our bylaws that kept us from providing that advice as a body to the board? Or is it some other rule or something?
it's probably this similar.
It's kind of comes down to simply, I guess, this is the advisory committee of the Flood Control and Water Conservation District. And that was a county planning item that has their own planning, has their own advisory committee, and it's even stronger than advisory committee in the planning commission. So it's kind of that, like, you know, obviously there's a nexus with water, and that's why it's of interest and why the planning department wants to come and hear the comments and the feedback. But as far as the actual official avenue for, you know, advising that, you know, being a county planning item, that's the planning commission's role. Now, is that a piece of the bylaws? I don't know, but it's, or I should say not necessarily, but I think it has to do with, you know, what our lane is, so to speak, in flood control, water conservation district advisory, you know, advising. So that's how. Now, again, comes back to the first comment, Eric, the purpose of the committee is laid out in bylaws. So could the committee propose a new purpose? I don't know. I want to ask my counsel on that, but yeah.
Christine and Clint.
Yes, in the past few years, I haven't seen any need to form an ad hoc committee because there weren't really any issues I saw personally that needed to be changed or be considered in the bylaws. However, now I am going to suggest that we do have a committee. I will make that a motion in a minute, but I will just follow up by commenting on some of the other things that have just been mentioned, specifically about the way we now have this bifurcated kind of a meeting. My alternate tends to be in touch with me to find out if I am going to be here or not. Today she could not be, but I think it would be important to maybe note in the bylaws, if I am on that committee, such a thing that whoever is here, it can be the alternate, even if the committee member is watching on Zoom. If the alternate is here, that alternate would vote, and that there would be a suggestion that alternates and the member are in touch with each other to hopefully have one or the other here. And I think there's a place where we can put that in the bylaws such that the person who is here, even if it's the second member, one's on Zoom, the main member, the alternate would be the person who could vote it in person. Something of that nature, I think, can be discussed and possibly put into our bylaws.
Yeah.
That's a thought I have. So for that reason, I would move that we do form an ad hoc review committee this year.
So, okay, so there's interest in an ad hoc, and now we need, maybe in the same motion, we could figure out who's going to serve on it. I'd be happy to serve. Clint.
That was my comment.
We're happy to serve.
Okay, so we've got
Linda and I,
Linda, Christine, Clint, Andy. Anyone else? And Tom? Deborah, thank you. And Deborah,
As long as we don't get to 12.
yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, so we'll take a pass at scheduling and we have kind of a bigger,
I would imagine we can do it all by email. If anyone has, I would ask that staff would be sending out this current bylaws to all the members. We can all come up with our ideas and we don't have to meet and get together. We can suggest by email. We don't have to try to schedule all of our meetings. I think it's a very simple little thing to review on bylaws. That's why I volunteered for this,
Yeah.
I volunteered for it. This is a simple thing to do, and it shouldn't take a lot of time for any of us, or even getting together in meetings. I think we can just do it simply.
all right, I will state that I think that we need a Zoom in there. So if you don't, I think we can do a lot by email. Clint, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, the only other thing is to the question of the framework of, of the district that the RAC advises that, and it was brought up during the orientation, is which statute is, and even clarifications like that probably would help clarify things as far as where the lane of the RAC is based off of where the lane of the district is. So,
Yeah.
I think it'd be good to clarify some of those parts of the bylaws that when I was looking at the bylaws, I'm like, oh, it isn't in there, so.
Yeah, okay, Eric,
If we can be sure it will indeed be functioning by way of email, I would be glad to volunteer as well. I have major transportation issues and so I try not to clutter myself with meetings. And one thing I'm hoping we can clarify is whether we are actually prohibited from commenting on planning department items, since we have as a group submitted comments on EIRs like Letitia. And they have been influential. So I'm not convinced by the answer to Tom's question, but hopefully we can hash that out.
okay. Last one, David.
Yeah, it's on the similar thing. I'm troubled by the staying in our lane comment. Because there is no technical advisory committee on water to planning. And we represent the expertise on water in the county. And it seems to be ludicrous that we could not comment on the ag ordinance because we stayed in our lane when it impacted the survival of the groundwater base. It seems absolutely ridiculous. So I would like the committee to kind of craft a few guesses at how we might send something to the board of supervisors to enable a slightly broader breadth of action.
All right, so noted for our ad hoc.
Since we have stepped out of that lane in the past and not been challenged for it.
Yes, yeah.
Great, thank you. Comments noted. Okay, so let me see if is there anybody online who wants to make a comment on this item about forming an ad hoc committee?
We don't have a second yet to discuss it.
Correct.
I will second.
Tom seconds. Anyone online? Just raise your hand or unmute. Seeing none. Any further discussion on this item before the vote? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thanks for your work on that, and we will reach out to get that scheduled. Okay, boy, that was cranking through our business. Pretty close. Okay. Brief update from county staff on the Arroyo Grande Creek levee and repairs. And I think Brendan, you're gonna take point on this.
Yeah, I've invited Brandon from our county team who spoke in February, but he is out meeting with FEMA as we speak on site. And so he sent me, unfortunately, you just got me reading the update. So that's what we got today. But I wanted to put this up just as a reminder where we had some of the highlight, the main issues down at the levee, where we had a manual breach, where there were damages. So it's kind of small, but here there was some damage to the north levee, in multiple places, and where the breach was in the south levee. This is during the January storm, as well as the manual breach site, which I believe was to help the flooding drain out. So as an update, repairs and debris removal is ongoing. There was a second emergency declaration for the area evacuation declaration, excuse me, on March 9th. Ahead of that storm, however, there was no significant damage to the levee from that rain. One of the things the team is tracking is the spilling of Lopez Lake, which started last week and is expected to go well into spring. The staff and consultant team, as a pretty big team, right now are working toward more significant vegetation and debris and sediment removal to restore the capacity back to where it was before this winter. That's the main stuff. And obviously they're out there meeting FEMA right now for funding and things like that. And Brandon Zuniga, again, he is our main contact. So if there's questions you have specifically about the levy, you can reach out to Brandon. And I could take some questions now. I don't know if Angela, if there's anything you could add to that, but that's the update on the levy. So still a very active site and project. Yes.
So on mouse it says manual. What's the second word after that?
Breach.
Manual breach. So is that essentially removing dunes so that water was steps?
I think so. I don't know specifically, but yeah, it was like after the valley had flooded, it was to help it drain. Yeah, help it drain out. Otherwise, it'd been there much longer. Yes.
Given what's happened in that area, has there been any impetus on the part of Union Pacific Railway to be more constructively engaged in their part of solving the issues there?
I can ask about that. I don't know. Tom.
You mentioned that Lopez is spilling and it's up close to 500 CFS a week or two ago. And now it's down to below 200. Do you happen to know if they expect it just to keep declining?
Yeah, I think it would be, without any rainfall, it will just continue to decline. Whatever's coming in will, slowly kind of meter out. I don't know the lag of water coming into the lake versus spilling, and then it'll stop.
Great. This was simply an update item. There had been interest last time in hearing more about this. Any other questions or comments? Anybody online?
I do have a question about the lagoon. There have been issues with the flat gate on that. How did that perform? Was there an issue in the lagoon with water unable to get to the Arroyo Grande Creek and flooding the lagoon?
I'm not sure about that. I don't know if anyone else might know, but I don't know that one.
I think they were fine from what I could gather, but I physically wasn't there to watch them. But as far as I know, no houses were not.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything like around the office to that end, but I don't know specifically, David. So perhaps I'm thinking maybe we can do a written update in the ongoing to answer a couple questions.
Yeah.
Perhaps, and then leave it there.
Okay. Great.
Oh.
Just from my perspective, what would be an interest in this is how did town operate according to waterways management program? In other words, did it meet the majority of what it was designed to do or not? And if not, why did it fail? What have we learned about this kind of storm and what that means to design in this area?
Yeah, great question. So did it meet its design objective, which is, necessarily limited?
A level of
Right. And if not, then, lessons learned, and even if so, like what next steps?
That's a great question.
Eileen,
Yeah, I just wanted to ask and make sure that this is a priority to, make sure that this doesn't happen again. I know that there's people that live by the trailers there in Oceano. Some of them aren't even considering moving, selling and moving because they're like, this is gonna happen next year. We trust the county to do something about this. It was, the first time when this happened, people were outraged that they were told of last minute. And it just seems like there should be like something, an area by Locust somewhere. I don't know where and where that.
be able to relieve
that
it.
would affect that bridge of water, so all this water doesn't come and, do all this damage and cause some of those people that live in those. They're not even home trailers, so they're probably easier to tip over and get damaged.
Yeah.
And they're really close. They're like there.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. Thank you, Tim.
Just like in Morro Bay, most of the flooding issues were related to debris.
Mhm.
And, I'm not sure how much related to capacity was an issue, honestly. And that falls back on the maintenance of the creek corridors over time. Which we saw in San Luis Creek, we saw in Morro Bay, we saw in Oceano. That's the key, is maintaining the flood path. So, just a side.
Yeah, yeah. Points. Any other comments on this item?
My
Steph?
name here in Oceano, I'd be happy to talk with you more about the very long story history of how the waterway program was developed and why the situation was the way it is historically based on breach that happened in 2001. Worse. And
Great, love that. At least half the point of this group is to help with the connections and information sharing. So thank you for that. All right. Thanks, Brendan.
Yep.
All right, and then our next item is to receive a presentation from county staff on the desal plan.
Sure, you're all set up here.
All right, good afternoon, all. I'm going to give a brief presentation on the desal plan. In case you weren't at the WRAC meeting last May when we first introduced it, the desal plan is an effort to look at what a desalination project could look like here in San Luis Obispo County. As you all likely know, desalination is the process of taking salt out of saline water. It can be seawater or brackish groundwater, but you remove it in order to produce fresh, clean, potable water. This is a very long-term project for the county. It can take a long time to get through the studies and analysis required to determine what a good project would be. And that's before you even get into the timing required for permitting, construction, et cetera. But it is a very high priority because it has the potential to be the most resilient and reliable water supply in the county in the future. This is a quick overview of the presentation. I'll go over the background, a little context as to why we're here talking about desal. I'll discuss the other agencies participating in development of the plan. I'll touch on the grant that we've applied for to help fund the desal plan. We'll talk a little bit about the scope of the project and close with next steps. So for the background, as many of you know, existing conditions and future projections show that water security is declining as demands increase and available water supplies and their reliability decreases. So demands are expected to continue rising with things like growing populations and changing regulations. Meanwhile, there are greater extremes with the availability of our rainfall-dependent supplies. Projections indicate that we're going to be seeing longer dry periods and wetter wet periods. So even years like this, when we got a lot of rain, it's important to understand that we are not able to capture all of the water that falls. Can take a long time to fill our reservoirs and a lot longer to replenish our groundwater basins. So while we had way above average rainfall this year, next year could be back to well below, and that, as we know, can continue for years to follow. That's why it's important that we look at a long-term resilient and drought-proof supply. So in October of last year, that's what the Board of Supervisors did. They authorized staff to begin working on a desal plan. And we are doing that coordinated together with other participating agencies around the county in order to see what a project could look like. So this map shows all of the agencies who agreed to be considered in the desal plan. You can see it includes all of the major water purveyors. This doesn't mean that each agency is going to be a part of a final plan, but we really value the participation of our partners at this stage because it gives us the most material to work with. We can factor in all of the partners' locations, service areas, projected future water needs, water supply vulnerabilities, potential exchange opportunities, and that just gives us the broadest sense of what a good project could look like. Right now, I'll talk about the grant submittal. We applied for a grant last year, but in February. We applied for a grant in February for the USBR's Bureau of Reclamation Water Smart Desalination Planning Grant. And these are the key details associated with the grant. So number one, for projects up to $5 million, USBR will consider awarding up to $1 million. There is a 50% local match requirement. And so we anticipated this effort to cost about 1.1, so we've requested 550,000. Another point, the grant requires that any of the work funded by the grant be completed within 2 years. Since we anticipate the desal plan is going to take longer than 2 years, we broke out the components that we thought we could finish in that time frame. And we envision that culminating in a short list of preferred projects. So I'll talk more about that, how it impacts the scope in a few slides. And the third point up there is a board resolution. The grant requires that the board adopt a resolution formally agreeing to the conditions of the grant should we get an award. So we plan to go to the board, as you can see, on April 18th. Lastly, the awards are anticipated in October this year, but USBR hopes to notify folks of whether or not they can expect an award by June. This timeline may look familiar. We showed this again last May when we introduced the desal project. This is the roadmap. As you can see, it's spread over 20+ years. The first 2 phases are devoted to planning. That is the effort to get started, engage with our partner agencies, and do the work necessary to determine what a preferred project would look like. Then phases 3, 4, and 5 are focused on taking that selected project forward through development, construction, and ultimately operation. So this kind of zooms in on phase 1. Again, last October, we got direction from the board to proceed with a plan. Then over the next few months, our partner agencies, their boards and councils adopted resolutions agreeing to be considered in the plan. That brings us to today, where we're updating you all on the status of the planning efforts and preparing to go back to the board in a couple of weeks. And then the next time we go to the board, we anticipate asking them to approve a consultant contract for this for this phase 2A. So that will wrap up phase 1, the desal plan agreement phase. Now, phase 2 includes all of the work necessary to identify and vet project concept alternatives and get to a ranking and selection of a preferred project. To accommodate the grant requirements that I mentioned earlier, we must complete the work within 2 years. We've broken that out into phase 2A.
Could I ask a question on that? What water are we going to be desaling? Is this aimed at ocean desal or a mix of recycled water desal and oceans, or just recycled?
That is to be determined. So at this point, nothing is off of the table. This first effort is to look at what the different opportunities are. So we submitted the grant application to fund this phase 2A part, which again, we believe we can complete within the 2 years that are required. And we think that'll get us all the way to a short list of projects that we would then pursue. Then phase 2B, which is outside of the grant scope, would be the effort to conduct more detailed studies and analysis of that short list of projects.
That include environmental impact reports.
Yeah, they wouldn't probably be in 2A, so 2B definitely. But environmental is going to be the whole thing. We have lessons learned from other desalination projects. The environmental is going to be a big component in even deciding what options there are.
Including whether or not there are any good options.
Correct.
And then are you telling me that we're not bought in, even though we're looking at grants and we're going to spend a bunch of money? We haven't decided to do it.
Correct. This is just planning at this
This
point.
is just investigating whether or not we will do a desal plan of any.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So yes, 2B would be kind of focused in on that short list of projects in order to do more focused studies. So to close, again, our next step is going to the board on April 18th, where we're going to ask them to approve a resolution that's required for the grant application. We're going to give an update on the desal planning effort, similar to what we provided here, and ask for direction to staff to come back with a consultant contract for that phase 2A. Also, the state plans to release their public draft of the siting guidance this month. So we're very much looking forward to what the state provides there. So that concludes the presentation. I'll take questions.
Are you considering only terrestrial options? In the sense, I remember reading several months ago, I wish I'd seen the article about small floating desal plants. They're quite small, about the size of a raft or something. That essentially float offshore and then have an electrical feed for whatever process they're doing, and then pipe the fresh water on shore where we're connected to a domestic system. One of the advantages, of course, they're small scale, so you're not end up with some huge project that might have significant local impacts. Also, because they're low velocity, you don't have the entrainment problems with fish and fish eggs and things like that. And also that you're able to diffuse the effluent effectively. Are you guys looking at options like that?
Yes. So again, nothing is off the table. There's some really neat technologies coming out and more that we're kind of getting glimpses of on the horizon. So we'll definitely be looking into all of that.
Can you explain what the siting guidance public draft is?
I wish I knew. They have just let us know that they're going to be coming out with it.
So it has something to do with desal. Do we know more than that? Locations of potential
Yeah,
places,
they're
or-
going to be, so the state of California, they're going to give guidance on where along the coast they feel the siting is most appropriate for desalination.
Okay.
What that's based on, who they're engaging with, they have not published any of that information.
Okay.
So we're very much looking forward to seeing what they show us this month.
Great, thank you.
Is there specific feedback that that you're looking for, either from us or at that next meeting with the supervisors in terms of direction? It sounds like at this point it's really just we're trying to go out for this RFP, and then once you get a contractor on board, that's when there'll be more of the vetting and community connection and all of that. But
Yeah, at this point, we're just happy to get, well, any feedback, but especially support. There's many off ramps, to Christine's point. This is the planning side, so we're not committed to anything. And we're just hoping to have everybody engaged from early on to help inform this process as we go forward. Can't forget this next. I think
And just a basic question for the siting guidance, is that from a single agency or is that multiple agencies? Do you know who's actually publishing it?
this, I believe the State Water Board, but they're in coordination with, I'm sure, Department of Water Resources and the other entities. Again, they haven't been as forthcoming about like what's informing that process for them, but hopefully it's all kind of shown on the document they provide.
Let's say water board's the one that notified you all that stuff. Okay, gotcha.
Is denitrification considered desalinization? In that, you know, we've had sections, say, the Los Angeles aquifers, where there's very, very high nitrate content. So they're probably going to bring that water up and process it to drop the nitrate level. Is that considered part of the desalinization project, or is that being something different?
I don't know about denitrification. I know that desalting brackish groundwater can be a form of desalination. I don't know if that answers your question, but I'm not sure.
We have polluted groundwater in ag basins all over the county, you know, and it's probably relatively simple to get the nitrogen out rather than every salt that's in the system, you know. But I'm wondering whether it's just part of the package or not. To look at that.
I'm not sure if we can find out.
We'll do Jim next.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna ask on the match for the funding. So when you get ready to go with this grant, are you going to be coming to the member agencies so they have an interest in this?
At some point, we will want a commitment from partner agencies if they wish to continue. But right now, again, we're just at the infancy of it, and so there will be opportunities, those off ramps before any funding is committed.
I saw Taylor next, and oh, sorry, Jim, were you not done?
So just so I understand, you're applying for the grant. It's not until you get the grant that you'll then.
Oh, the district will be funding it.
Oh, okay,
So correct. This first part
only
is
when we go to maybe build it or design it or something. Maybe. So you won't be
definitely later in
the
the process.
Thank you. Taylor, then Charles, did you? Yeah.
Yeah, and again, I understand you guys are still in the initial phase, but just curious if, just given where Diablo Canyon is and the back and forth, whether it's going to stay open or closed, would that be something that you guys consider repurposing and recycling?
Yes.
Looking at that.
Yes, we don't have anything off of the table right now.
What happens to the salt, the sea salt after desal?
It depends.
Environmental issue, right?
For Diablo right now, they currently mixed it in with cooling water that's being returned to the ocean. So it's a highly diluted issue. Once Diablo shuts down, whether it's 2025, 2030, that cooling water flow through stops. And then you've just got this stream of saline water that would flow in and probably definitely exceed local standards. So they'll have to re-permit the outflow and probably the intake to continue to operate it after Diablo shuts down.
All right, I have Charles, then Eric,
So you mentioned.
and then
this
Tim.
Agency providing guidance about where along the coast. So when they say coast, they are thinking in terms of ocean water, not, some brackish water somewhere inland. But regardless of where the source of the water is, you've got agencies, potentially interested agencies all over the county. Is the premise that you're going to desal this and then pipe it up to all of these participating agencies? Is that kind of the general premise?
No, the premise, the reason why we want that breadth of participation can also go to like potential exchanges. So if someone is able to take desal and it offsets, their use of state water or something, or NACI, then NACI participants would have access to more water. So that's kind of the idea.
That explains to me why some inland agency might have an interest.
Eric, then Tim.
On the Diablo conversation, I guess this is for each of us as individuals, but Tom has raised some very important issues there. The draft environmental impact on Diablo decommissioning is likely to come out for comment sometime in the next few months. it may be that we'll find a way through the bylaws to make comments collectively, but whether or not that happens, I think a lot of us with concerns about what happens both to the water and to the, should we say, waste products. We'll definitely want to take a close look at that document when it comes out. And by the way, the county has not been preempted by Senate Bill 846 from its CEQA lead agency and land use permitting role relative to decommissioning. It is being sidelined relative to relicensing, which is a whole separate track, but which would raise very similar operational issues, which would have to probably be dealt with primarily at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission level, but to some extent with the State Water Resources Control Board, who have been somewhat confined by SB 846, but not completely sidelined.
Tim, then me, and then
So
what else?
my question is really more on the comments. So, but it relates to how we implement this RFP and consultant efforts going forward. I would just encourage using local consultants, not necessarily my firm, but I mean, you know, there's an inherent knowledge base about how the Central Coast, especially our area, you know, works and is knowledgeable about what our resources are and what is done. You know, when you go out and get like Corolla or some, you know, AECOM or somebody like that, you know, they're not really invested in how we do things around here. So my comment would be, I would encourage you to use a local consultant for that study.
Is that part of the selection criteria when an RFP goes out? I know like some jurisdictions have kind of a local bonus, or if that's some of the criteria is familiarity with the region, that type of thing. Is that?
We haven't developed the RFP for that yet. I don't know that it's required, but it may be something that's considered.
Could be considered. All right. My comment would be that like I think all of the cities, was Atascadero in there in the list of?
Chester Regional Water Company.
Okay, but not, oh, right,
City's
okay,
not the water
sure,
purveyor.
isn't the purveyor, thank you. So the city of San Luis Obispo did support being at the table, even though I think there was skepticism amongst the members that this would be a strategy we would actively utilize. And I think we felt like, God, let's be at the table though, county-wide, regional resilience is really important. And if we can figure out lots of other strategies that are conservation centered or lower energy centered, et cetera, great. And this may need to be a tool in the toolbox, and two, as we've talked about here, is that the technology is evolving, right? There could be some awesome solutions coming up in the future. So yeah, so that's it's not obvious that we would be kind of moving forward with the desal project, but that was the reasoning behind it. So we appreciate the county's leadership on that. Any additional comments here in the room? Christine?
Yes, I'm just gonna go back to that number one section there, demand. And I guess it's just because we're human, but this county, as well as many places, continue to never look at or question the demand side. There's no limits on demand. There's limits on everything else, all the resources and everything we want and need, but there's never any suggestion of limits on demand. In spite of the fact that the last census showed that our county and this city did not grow very much, we're nevertheless building for some fabulous future, more and more and more. And we're going to take and take and take because we demand. I think it's.
I'm going to take a different approach.
Yeah.
All right,
So,
Deborah.
there is, so I represent Templeton CSD, and we do have a limit on demand for water. We actually have a wait list for water units. And some of those folks have been on the wait list for 20 years. So what we have is we have a policy where we have a 20% reserve, because we know there's water units that are sitting out there where people have not used them, they've not connected. But we have issued that will serve letter. So I think there is a restriction, but I do also agree with your belief that, yes, there's a lot of development, and where's all the water for all this development? So it is something that I can only speak to Templeton, but we do have a limit on, but we have 600 water units that have been issued where they've not been connected yet. So, but we do have a reserve where we're looking at, we have a population we've already committed to, those being already connected and those that we've issued those cert letters. We keep a 20% reserve, and that's something we look at on an annual basis. So I can only speak to Templeton, can't speak for the other agencies, but it is a balance. But it does seem like there's a lot of development, and do we have enough water for all this development?
Thank you. Anyone who hasn't spoken yet? Anyone online want to comment on this item? Okay, Eric,
Yeah,
last one.
just the word demand has always bothered me as well. Parents do not encourage their children to be demanding, but somehow collective demand is ascribed to all of us when we're talking about water and other resources. Is there a reason why that word rather than need is used again and again and again and again in these documents? Are we being trained to be demanding as opposed to simply recognizing what are our needs?
All right, I'm going to suggest we not take up the, a very good point, but semantics maybe not something we're up for right now.
Needs in your
Well, no,
community.
because there's a difference, I see the difference between need and demand. The need is for existing. The demand is developers wanting to develop, and that's the demand. And that demand sometimes exceeds the need and what's already provided.
So, sorry, Tim, did you want one last?
Well, demand is community-based in any given community. It's not developer-based, it's community-based. I'll leave it at that.
Fair enough. Okay. Again, I feel like it's perhaps semantics. So thank you so much. Appreciate it. And then I guess the question is, so you're presenting to the board.
It'll be on consent, but
It'll just be on consent. Okay, so having a motion from this body wouldn't be influential, not unnecessary to see like.
I don't believe it's necessary. I certainly wouldn't be mad if there was more support.
Yeah. So I would imagine that's a possibility that if this body wanted to, as a whole, make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors to authorize this RFP, we could certainly do that, or we can just be a receiving body for the information.
Well, this on the agenda is to receive a presentation. There's no action on the agenda.
I think we'd be in trouble with the Brown Act.
Oh, I don't think so. I think we could take an action to support, right? I mean,
My
it's on the,
understanding is it's on the agenda.
yeah, we can do
It's
whatever we
open
want.
for-
We can do, somebody could make a motion if they wanted. I'm allowing for the possibility.
I don't want the RFP process to be limited, but I think to the gentleman's point about having perhaps one of the criteria that's used to evaluate different, construction options or vendors would be to look at, are they local? Do they know the area? And how well versed they are. So I would think that that would be one criteria that you use to evaluate, but not limit the RFP process.
Right, no, local knowledge, familiarity with San Luis Obispo County water issues, et cetera. Yeah.
So kind of nods of heads, we're generally supportive of the action being brought to the supervisors for the RFP for the study. Yes, and we'd like to include the suggestion that the selection criteria include familiarity with the local area. Whether or not they are physically here, I think it's not as, leave that open, but it's sort of familiar with the area. Okay, so everybody good with that by consensus? Okay, Great,
And keep
thank
us
you.
in the loop.
Yeah, excellent. All right. Thanks, everyone, for your input. It's obviously a big item, but very, very long term. All right, so that was the substantive item of our agenda. We still have ongoing updates. I'm going to read through these, and just if you have anything you'd like to add or comment on, just holler. Rain and reservoir report.
Yeehaw.
I know, right? Okay. Any other comments? Okay. California drought monitor summary.
I didn't even include it on this one.
Is that right? It's all white, right? It's just like a big California with white. Groundwater.
I will just add on the drought. I do think I'll keep, my thought is to keep the drought as a reporting, turning to the page. Given the state SB 552, one of the requirements is to have a standing drought committee. Now, that's not the WRAC, but if items come out of that committee, this is one of the places, I guess, me personally think it would be important to report what's going on. So there is a board item coming up, I think at the end of the month related to drought. So we'll keep an eye on that, and I'll report out what comes of that. So I do think I will keep this on here as something we're actively monitoring in the sense.
Is the purpose of that item for the board to determine whether they will cease making emergency drought declarations every 60 days?
I believe so.
Thank you.
However, the governor did not rescind the emergency drought declaration for the county.
Really?
Yeah, that was one of the things that he did keep. He rescinded the voluntary reduction, the requirement to enter into stage 2 of the water shortage contingency plan, but he did not rescind the emergency drought declaration.
Did he give a rationale?
I think the rationale is kind of in line with their messaging lately, is to conserve water, whether it's wet period or dry period, because they're expecting just a period of extreme weather.
Yeah, we won't be doing the happy dance another month. Thank you.
You know that
Nick
1861, 62 winter of unbelievable flooding was followed by such a catastrophic drought that the cattle industry collapsed, for example. So it's, we can celebrate while we're celebrating, but it may not last.
Yeah, hopefully we're wiser about that. Thank you, appreciate that, Nick. Let's see, groundwater basin management efforts. Yeah, Steve.
So it's my understanding that the board of supervisors on May 16th is going to hear a couple of things related to this. One is to discuss whether the Estrella Altamont Custom Water District should become CSA. And the other one is to look at the letter of opposition that the board passed in opposition to the San Juan Water District application for water from Massimino and the Salinas. And so I don't know whether that also wants to be something that we put under future agenda items or not. So I just want to alert you that that's coming up right after our next board.
Thank you. This goes back to that. I mean, if nothing else, information items, right? I mean, that's members here, so. Okay, thank you, Steve. Tom.
Yeah, under the item for the Cayuga Water Basin, it says that the GSP is yet to be approved, but I believe, at least according to our review, that it was approved in early March or late February.
That is true.
But it's, so I'm not sure the language in there is quite accurate, but also I think that there, the adjudication has been appealed by a couple of large sheriff roads. So I don't know if that information is in there as well.
Great, thank you. Get that updated. All right, that was groundwater basin, IRWM, integrated regional water management.
Nothing to add, just waiting on our we applied for the latest grant February 1st, so waiting on response to that.
Great, thank you. Master water report.
Can we just go back to that a second?
Oh, yeah.
I have not yet seen a reaction from the county from state demands for housing. And, you know, we're told that we're way behind on the amount of houses we're meant to provide. And yet there's no waterfall. And with an integrated water management plan, it seems that somewhere we will be discussing how we handle the state's demand for more housing. Is that part of it?
That effort's being led by SlowCog actually
Yes.
right now.
You should know that the deadline for comments on the regional transportation plan / sustainable communities strategy is tomorrow at 5 p.m.
But
you can review it for whatever parts you can get to at the SlowCog website.
But I think more to the point in terms of water, is that the master water report, which is the next item, is the place where it is tied to housing. And that gets folded into those RENA, the regional housing needs allocation, and a new housing infrastructure program that's being studied to figure out where are the most likely sites for increased housing, which is the next item. Any update there? Because I think we're going to put that as an item for next month or
Yeah, in a
month
coming
after.
month, yeah, in a
Soon.
coming meeting. Yeah, we'll have a bigger master water report update. And, you know, we completed the big push for our data and information audit. And so our consultant now has been compiling and going through all those, finding all the threads where the different types of data for different types of demands. For example, you know, our large cities have urban water management plans, or large water systems, excuse me, you know, and so tracking their demand changes over time and future projections is one method. Our smaller systems, some report to, you know, the state, or most of them submit to the State Division of Drinking Water, while some others are also in a groundwater management area that has more specific reporting and tracking. So how do we organize all these different methods and ways, you know, so we have the most accurate data, and how are we going to be updating it? So those are the types of things we're looking at. I had a meeting this morning about that exact topic with our consultant. And so I do think an update in the next meeting or two on those types of processes. That's where we're at with the project right now. And working on what we're calling the proof of concept of our data and information management system. That would be summertime for that. And that's where we're going. And that information we're developing leads to the, is SlowCog is looking to us to, what we're going to come up with, what's out there, and to input that into their report and planning for the housing needs assessment. So there's a connection there in that sense. We are communicating with each other. Yeah, Kristen.
From what you have just said, and from what I'm reading here, you're working on it, and develop, and you're going to provide detailed updates. But I don't see any place or hear anything that asks for our input, a workshop, an agenda item early on, where we can provide our input and to any updates, not just be presented with the update. Here it is, take it or leave it, kind of thing. But is there going to be an actual agenda item where we will, before June or September, before it goes to the board, before it goes to SlowCog, that we are going to have time to have our opinions heard and inputted into this whole report?
Absolutely, and I think we've had those times in the past. We were here multiple times last year during the official data and information audit phase, but that doesn't mean that just because we called it that, we're not taking in new data and information. And I think each time we come, or I come to present, I'm open for those comments and feedback, absolutely. So this is the venue for the public vetting and input and information for the project. And so I think we will be here multiple times a year talking about this project and getting input and feedback along the way. Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, two questions. One is it an existing, like you say, an older plan that has older data that's already available?
Yes, the basis of the project, we have a 2012 master water report, which included up to 2009 data, and it's a one-time static document. And so lots happened in the last 13 plus years.
Is that available somewhere straightforward?
Absolutely, yeah.
The second question is, so I understand, so what's going to come in the summer, sort of the plan for the plan, what the plan's going to look like, or is the actual plan coming?
So we're creating a data and information management system, GIS web-based. So there may be an actual physical plan, but the majority of the project is how we're going to be tracking the changes to demand and supply, and as new projects come on board, if someone changes their state water allocation or something changes like that, we can reflect that in a system and not just have a one-time plan. Yeah, so we'll have a operations and maintenance plan with staff, Joey and myself, keeping that updated. And yeah.
It's just the coolest thing ever. I'm just gonna say, I know that we're spoiled having Brendan, be our regular RAC person, but this effort, I think, is really the crux of what we are interested, the information that we're trying to get, the fact that it's going to be an ongoing, living, transparent kind of document. I think it's huge. So yes, more as that comes on.
And we hope it, our hope in turn is it's going to help inform what Angela was just presenting, regards to desal. So put some of the numbers behind, if our thesis is that supply is going to change due to certain things, climate changes in state water, changes in groundwater, changes in whatever, whether it's regulatory or different things, put some numbers to those thoughts and trends we're seeing in different things to help inform our big countywide, district-wide efforts. So.
Awesome. Any other questions on the master water report update? Yeah, Steph.
Call for data sets?
If you have data sets, I think you should contact me. We've done the big call per se. However, it's not not a closed at this point.
Mostly interested in service water. And also working to state legislation that is cranking up to increase the community statewide and fund.
Yeah, let's connect.
Also feed into the water.
Yeah, let's connect.
Yeah, stream gauges. Excellent. Thank you. Okay. Let's see, state water project. Questions or comments? Desalination, we just talked about. Various county water programs, policies, and ordinances. And open reporting on water conservation opportunities and information. Okay. Let's see, and then as we,
I'll have one thing.
Sure.
In February, we got a presentation from county staff about the updates to our low impact development manual, our LID manual. That draft was just released yesterday. And so I'm going to make sure it's packaged up and I'll have it sent out to the group. They have it set up for, as you open the documents, I think you are able to comment on the document. They're trying something new. So I shouldn't have opened my mouth about that because I didn't actually know how it's going to work. But it's now available and I will distribute it out to our email list after the meeting. Yes.
So is there a deadline?
Linda.
Is there a deadline for commenting?
I would assume so. I don't know off the top of my head.
It just seems to me like that's the type of thing that maybe we should be considering at the next meeting, having a potential subcommittee to review it for impacts and where there may be discrepancies in terms of not taking into consideration where water availability may be.
Thank you. Yeah, Steve?
But I forgot to mention, the governor suspended the usual water rights procedures to allow people to pump flood flows, to percolate it in all groundwater basins. And Shannon San Juan offered or voted to put $20,000 up to help any of its members to support the costs of, help them alleviate the costs of doing that. And I believe that there was some of that done. I don't know how much, maybe by next month I'll have some information.
So that's a potential future agenda item, it sounds like, for getting an update on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can report.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah.
That'd be really cool.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
What do you think the potential is for that type of action in this council?
Opportunities like that.
Compared to, I know what it is over the valley.
You're talking about the last 10 years or this year? No, there's a lot of places along, particularly the Australian National Basin, which is one of our more target basins too. There's a lot of sandy ground just off the stream. And research from University of California shows that a lot of crops can take flooding for a period of time. And because you can flood and stop pumping, you can kind of control how long it's going to stay wet. The grapes are one of the crops, and I think almonds and pistachios can also take flooding for a period of time. So a lot of that sandy ground along the strait is really good quality opportunities and well located for some of the worst areas for overdraft.
And I really think that there needs to be a planning opportunity that when that type of opportunity opens up that I'm thinking of the agricultural lands down along Red Creek where, the levee breaks and then they get tons of sediment and runoff that is polluted into that acreage that makes the ag fields, it demands a cleanup. And if it can be done in that respect, in that way, in terms of planning it, perhaps there's a way to determine if some of the produce that is grown down in the Cienega Valley, at what point it can take more water, and maybe they can be looking at water diversion from Arroyo Creek at times when it's
I do believe there are restrictions on using recently cultivated ag land for that purpose.
That's true.
Say that again. Recently, what?
Recently cultivated ag land.
Because it had chemicals in it? Is that?
Set up somehow.
Yeah, well, the governor's order didn't include ag ponds as a place where you could do it. So it needs work, the governor's order, but maybe it'll be ready next time. And we'll have more places that we could put it. Better places to put it.
I thought there was a conversion of rice land to water recharge up into Hamer County. That they, what was rice now is water recharge up there. But you know, think about that.
I just hear this stuff running.
All right. Great comments. And if we get to a point where we think that there's either state legislation that we want to advocate for to, be on the county's ledge platform, or if there's a specific policy or program that we can advocate to the Board of Supervisors, that is our role. I don't know the details enough myself to be able to kind of discern. So I kind of leave it to this group to if there are, motions to be made or letters to be written to support that kind of integrated thinking, then let me know. Okay. Otherwise, good information. All right, so, and I think that we have in our May, May is our budget. We'll be talking about our budget and
You mentioned a water conservation item.
yeah,
So
water.
put it in there.
Yeah, I was hoping, again, putting Nick on the spot, just because you had done that survey work to see what programs, incentive programs in the urban environment people were interested in. And you got, one, it was a cool program, that just the inventory or the survey itself. And then I haven't really heard what the results are. And so maybe next time you might be able to bring a few slides. Yeah. Because they kind of came out with what are the higher impact incentives so that they're not wasting their time with other ones. So if you wouldn't mind slating that for the May 3rd, that'd be awesome. Thank you. Any other agenda items that folks feel pressing? Tom?
Yeah, one for, it doesn't have to be anytime soon, but I'm just curious. Probably everybody's aware of what's going on with the Tulare Lake. And the potential for a quick snow melt that's going to grow even larger. There was a good article in the LA Times just a couple of days ago talking about how as that lake grows, it is overtaking agricultural operations like dairy farms and poultry plants or poultry yards. And also as a site near Kettleman City where the LA County dumps a lot of sewage sludge, and that's going to mix with the water and potentially contaminate the aquifers. And when I read that, it sounded horrific. And I know the governor is working very hard with the county supervisors to avoid problems. And my thought was, well, I'm so glad it's not happening here in our county. But I realized I don't know if it is or not. I mean, certainly not on the scale of Tulare Lake, but and the last couple months have been a good test with all the rain. Possibly could we have a report from staff at some point of, is that even a concern in our county? Obviously, it would be on a smaller scale. I don't think we have a lot of feedlots or things like that where people dumping sewage sludge, but I just don't know enough. Or does the county even know whether or not we're risking contaminated groundwater because of runoff and things like that?
All right.
I think
Discussion item.
Like 20 years ago or something, banned the application of sludge on land.
Actually, it was a numerical limit. It's allowed, but only up to a limit that accommodates a couple of local purveyors, and it has to be composted and so on. I would love to see a ban, but we're not there.
Okay. I know there was it came before WRAC.
Yes.
And LA County Sanitation did say once they compost it and cook it, that removes all the bacteria, so there's no more fear of bacterial contamination in groundwater. But I don't know what
It's
that
not
does with heavy
strictly
metals.
true. It reduces the levels extensively, but under certain conditions, they can grow back.
So, but it seems like the bigger issue of is if and when there is flooding, are there areas that could lead to contamination?
Right.
Is that something we need to? Yeah, well, yeah, interesting. Yeah, it's something we haven't, well, just flooding in general has not been on the RAC agenda for a long time. That has not been our emphasis. Briefly, Eric, is it?
Kind of another part of, in the agricultural element, I think it may be Ag Policy 8, but I can't remember, something about large animal facilities, or it's not confined animal facilities, but it basically means something like that. And then the question of whether the standards we have for those are adequate to prevent this sort of thing from happening. So I realize this is, again, it's stepping out of our lane, I suppose, to be commenting on
I mean, that's
element, but guess what? It matters.
Yeah, no, that's that's part of our water quality. Okay, great. If you have Ed.
A couple weeks ago, there was a presentation here to the local civil engineering society on ESAL plan, Doheny. And I think we should get that presentation. I don't want to be in contact.
Okay.
But
Was it the American Society of Civil Engineers, ASCEE, or whatever that is?
But it was, they talked about the design, the funding, and our friends, the coastal commission, so they're on everybody's radar.
That's the one that got approved?
Yeah.
The Coastal Commission? Interesting. Okay, thanks, Ed. Thank you. All right, any last agenda? Actually, I'm just going to close that. If you have other agenda items, let me know. Or Brendan know. All right, and then last item here is public comment for items that are not on the agenda. We conveniently save this to the very end. Eric, brief.
Yeah, just anyone who is interested in protection of water quality by shading and production of energy, it should be of interest to note that the Turlock Irrigation District is beginning to implement a project to create solar power by putting panels over their canals. We don't have in this county any agencies with large acreages of open canal water, but there are, other open bodies of artificial water that might be able to learn from their experience. So anyone who is interested in this, visit the website of the Turlock Irrigation District. They are fortunate enough to also be a power production district, so they have the dual function. And this is helping both retard evaporation, keep the temperature down, retard algal growth in the water. So it is very much a water quality, but it also is climate-friendly power production.
Nice.
It is ecologically benign.
Are we looking at that for the ponds at Los Osos wastewater plant? I don't know if I've heard that before.
All right, so this is public comment for items not on the agenda that aren't like future agenda or ongoing updates. All right, David, then Christine.
Yeah, I noticed there were 3 public notices in the New Times for storage between reservoirs. In other words, one was a tentative permit investigation for a pipeline that would go from, I think it's into Lopez from Santa Margarita Lake, for example. And there were 2 other big projects like that were up.
Right, they're energy storage projects.
Energy storage projects.
Correct.
And they seem to have enormous impact if they ever went through. But it seems to have just been the tiny printed back in New Times that no one's talking about.
Who is paying for them?
Yeah, they're energy storage development projects. I don't know if we have anything more to add. They're so conceptual right now. But good reminder, that would be interesting. We're tracking it, I would say, at the city. Christine.
Yeah, I just want to kind of follow up on what Tom said and Eric. I know in the San Juan Valley, in the Central Valley there, they are also looking at solar panels on the canals to try to limit evaporation and save the water. But then when it comes to too much water and the damage that might be done when it overflows, the LA Times also had a big article. We have lost the aqueduct. The Los Angeles Owens Valley Aqueduct was breached. Pumps undermined, so much water, whole areas, the valley of the dry lake that had been dry forever suddenly was flooded, and all of the dry saline was being dissolved in there, and real concern about water quality elsewhere. So that is just an interesting take that of what can happen with flooding and maintaining our ground quality, because the water does get it, then that can cause some real devastation for that land and its future uses also.
Thanks. All right, so online, any comments before we adjourn? Okay, feel free to hang out with each other, network, connect. Otherwise, this meeting is adjourned. Our next regular meeting is May 3rd at 1:30 here in this room. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.